Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Because this main screen now jumps into cutscenes from the solo like this, they now have really changed the audio profile of what you may hear if you just launch the app and then walk away for a while, because up until this point it's just been that same song playing in the background, just general background music. But some of these, as you can hear even now, play different songs and make sound effects. So, yeah, you may get a loud noise of some sort depending on which of the many solo player sections it wants to play. And yeah, they probably should not do that and just stick with the same background song, or maybe even find two background songs, because yeah, 1 year in, 1 year anniversary in this game, it would probably help to have a doubling of the amount of sounds and songs playing. So they're doing a 1 year anniversary reward appreciation thing. So they've given me like an ultra rare, like I think this is a ticket for one ultra rare card, and then 500 gems on the second day. I assume, well, actually it's purchasing one anniversary pack is what they're calling it. I'd assume that you have to log in every day to get this, otherwise you might skip something. And even that seems a little extreme, that you'd have to log in every single day for 7 days straight for very little reward here, in that you start with 500 and you get 3 packs, and then you get another 200, another 200, and another 100. So you're talking 1,000 gems and 3 packs is not much of anything. Let's see what this page is. 1 pack plus 1 ultra rare seems to be a collection of ultra rares amongst these packs, which these are probably somewhat recent metaverse cards. Like, you can see the ultra rares you've acquired for the +1 special ultra rare pack. It says I have only 1, and yet it seems like there's 8 in total you can collect. So I don't even know how you get this. Again, I don't know if there's even a way to get this. You can check on the featured cards and cards included in the secret packs, and odds by selecting a secret pack image. The cards included in these packs are the same as the normal secret pack. So, yeah. Seems like they've just completely changed the interface quite a bit here. So, probably would behoove you to try and figure out which of these packs would be your best one to go with. But this seems like these secret packs have a massive amount of ultra rares. So either I've never seen these secret packs in the form they are in, or there's something else weird going on here, because this is just showing me like all 7,000 cards in each of these packs. Yeah. So I'm confused. Very confused as to what I'm even supposed to do here. Random blah blah blah. Seems like you even need this big box of text just to explain what's going on. So yeah, it's just a shuffle. So you wouldn't even be able to select what you wanted anyways. There. So just pick one. That's as good of a pack as any other. Like, who cares? Like, who cares what at all you pick? So you open the pack and we've got a new super rare of the non-selection pack group and new cards that are normals and rares in the non-selection pack group, and then nothing new in the selection pack. And so now we have a special ultra rare pack. It's almost like it's trying to teach the player what the ultra rare packs are, but at 1 year in, you probably should already know what the ultra rare packs are. In the sense that it's going to have at least one ultra rare in it, although this ultra rare pack is actually different than that. And inherently, you're screwed with this setup because now they've unlocked a secret pack, and you will always unlock a secret pack when you get an ultra rare. So now you have to go over to this and look at the cards included in this pack and potentially consider, are you a good candidate? Something's wrong with this system. Like, what is going on there? I think their programming's broken. Or, oh, I guess you have to go to featured cards and then look at this. But there wasn't a featured cards otherwise. Just see if we can make any sense of this. Also, for the anniversary, gyms are on sale. Still not really worth it to spend any money on this game. Not unless you just really, really love Yu-Gi-Oh! And let's see. New selection pack is here. Alternative art. Ultra rare cards are here for a couple cards. The idea of them introducing alternative art sounds really, really bad. That's the concept. There's already way, way too many cards in this game, and going down the route of Magic the Gathering and selling alternative art versions sounds like a nightmare. Okay. Bonus packs, secret packs. 1 pack, 1 free pool. Guess we can do this to start with on this, but why not wait until like 40 days from now and do it? So 53 days left for new step for the Duelist, and 53 days left for this, 21 days for that. So we've got 2 new packs there to deal with also. So just releasing a ton of content all at the same time. New structured deck, and by far the best way to get cards, even though you can't sell these extras, which is a flaw in Yu-Gi-Oh! By far. But by far, it makes so much sense to spend 1,500 gems and be guaranteed 3 copies of this ultra rare, 3 copies of this ultra rare, and at least 3 copies of everything else. 3 copies of this ultra rare. There's no way that you would spend 1,500 gems and end up with 4 ultra rares times 3, 12 ultra rares, on top of a massive amount of super rares that you also would have, and rares and normals that you would also have. So yeah, you would have to have at least one of these, one of every card in this list before you would even consider not buying even one. Now, your hope would be that the ones that have 4 here, one of those cards could be dismantled, but who knows. But yeah, that is the easy decision. There's no way getting around that. Now, it's pretty stupid, fairly obviously, to spend 300 to buy this, but it gets it unlisted as purchasable. It's pretty stupid to spend 50 to buy this, although since this is Blue Eyes White Dragon, not terrible choice of all the choices. Much more players, I imagine, would want Blue Eyes White Dragon than, say, Visa Starfrost, a character I have no idea about. Like, or some of these, frankly, to my eyes, are just kind of hard to even figure out what you're looking at because of the way it's boxed in and framed. Or in this one, Gila is just not really in a color palette that seems in line with any of the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff. There's an anniversary bundle here that I guess we should also purchase. Don't need additional slots. And then here's the anniversary pack, but I don't think you can purchase this because you have to have the ticket. So I guess the hope would be that you would get one of each of these packs, but I don't know how you're going to end up with 8 tickets at this point. It seems to me, unless the anniversary event goes on more than 7 days, and it's just showing us the first 7 days, seems to me like you're not likely to get that. Yeah. Guess you would have to go to featured cards at this point, and then click your cards to try to get an idea. But I don't think any of that really matters. I think your hope here is just to get all of these and hope that it makes it easier so you don't get duplicates. Because if you get duplicates, then yeah, having a 1 in 8 chance to get that last pack that you haven't gotten before is going to be really, really low. I can't afford this, but I should probably save up for this. Let's see. 30 master packs is a pretty good deal because it would cost $3,000 to get 30 master packs, on top of which you're getting seemingly a lot of extra garbage accessories. An alternate art Dark Magician card. But the question really will come down to how is your average player who's like new to the game because of the first anniversary going to be anywhere close towards getting any of this? Like, it's not particularly likely, and there's no special daily quest from the looks of it around any of that. We can do the accountability section really easily today. Just say I did nothing yesterday and was not productive at all. I'm potentially losing momentum on playing the Descendants. I guess the Descendant also needs to be not confused with the Descendants, which is the Disney tween-age show or movies of the kids of the bad guys of and good guys of Disney movies. So you have like Snow White's daughter and Ursula's daughter, things like that. Let's see. Apparently there's this Legend Anthology event that's coming the 16th, so tomorrow, and seems to me like you get a bunch of gems and then a accessory and then a bunch of legendary legacy packs. So this seems like that's going to be a lot of work, and then on top of that they seem to want to double up on the 20th with an XYZ festival, which is a bunch of gems and an accessory and some legacy packs. And if anything, it feels like they're trying to bring back the XYZ festival that happened from the last year, but I'm fairly certain that this rank up reward here was not the same reward as the last time there was an XYZ festival. Meanwhile, it seems like I have maybe 2 more days in which I can play ranked and try to get to platinum. Probably won't make it to platinum, and then that'll be it for the month. My only hope would be that whether you're doing one of the festivals or whether you're just playing ranked, or even if you're playing unranked, they would hand you extra rewards for the anniversary towards those anniversary pack tickets. That it would just be a kind of low odds, but not that low odds expansion, extra reward. I suppose it could also be a case that the anniversary reward does not really go away over the course of the next year, and they do several events to get you potentially all 8 of those packs. Because it feels very odd at the moment. It seems like even if you wanted to spend real world money or spend crystals to get more ultra rare special packs for the anniversary event, you wouldn't be able to do it. Marvel Snap. Oh, that's broken. Alright, well, let me... I don't know how I didn't see that, but we'll fix that fairly quickly. Let's see, web peak, display capture, back there. That bug that the current version of OBS I has still happens, where if you say turn a Roku TV into on and watch something on Roku, it moves the Windows numbers around and it causes a problem. So that should be working now. Yeah, it seems like Marvel Snap has fairly quickly announced yet another series drop. I don't like calling them series. Seems like they are slowly but fairly consistently moving small groups of cards down to lower tiers, is a much better term for it, in which the cards will become more, have higher odds that you'll actually collect them. Which, yeah, that is a major problem with Marvel Snap. I'm still playing Marvel Snap. I'm stupid for doing it, but there's definitely a major problem there, in that I've played Marvel Snap to its fullest, and short of throwing what feels like a lot of money at it, there doesn't seem to be a path forward to collect any more cards in a reasonable amount of time. There is a path forward using the collector's tokens, but the collector's tokens are frankly a joke, and you will never get enough of them to even unlock all the cards available so far, let alone when they add more cards. Which a game like that, since it is really just a collectathon game more than it is even a card game, it's going to live or die by how much more cards and more content that it can add. And yeah, it has a real problem there as far as creating new versions of cards. I could probably do the math on it too. There's I guess you would probably say there's 7 levels of cards that cost when you rank by cost. That is like a 1 cost. Like, I don't think there are any 0 cost cards. So 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, 4 cost, 5 cost, 6 cost, and then there are 6 plus costs cards that have special, like, summoning requirements, for lack of a better term. And then around those 7 cost of cards, you have reveal, ongoing, no effect, discard, destroy. Reveal, ongoing, no effect, discard, destroy. So that's like 5. Yeah, I'm not sure that there's another effect in the game at all. I'm trying to really think about it. No, I think that's pretty much it. So multiply 5 by 7, and that effectively says you can have 35 cards, and then you can have those 35 cards potentially expanded by an attack value between 1 or really 0, and you could go as high as you want. I've seen a couple cards that are at 20, but let's just be realistic and average it down to 7, really. So you multiply that 35 by 7, so that'd be 7, 14, 21, plus another 35. So you're talking 250 cards, 245 cards, roughly, in the entire maximum grid of potential unique cards you could make in Marvel Snap before you're just doing a 2/2 bear with a different skin on it, which they already are doing massive amounts of reskinning and variants of the exact same card, which is insane. Interesting. Alright, well, this guy is not successfully doing much of anything. I suppose, in fairness, since you are also limited to the idea of Marvel characters, and they have to be at least somewhat reasonable characters, 250 recognizable Marvel characters aren't even that many. I'm not sure there are that many in the Marvel Pantheon in the first place. Let's see. But yeah, it definitely needs to be pointed out that compared to something like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can just always make more cards, Marvel Snap is limiting itself to Marvel. Unless it can just expand and just like do DC Snap. And even if it could do that, I'm not sure that is enough. Because at that level, you are still potentially adding only another 500 cards, and I doubt you could do Marvel and DC Snap if more than you would potentially be able to just make a second mobile card game called DC Snap that was completely disconnected from Marvel Snap. And frankly, I wouldn't put it past Second Dinner if they lost the licensing agreement with Marvel to try to make a game just called Snap that had new original art creations that they owned. Valentine's Day happened, and yeah, there was one company in particular that had a like specific format of a red background and then all its subsidiaries, of which there were a lot, would put out a Valentine's Day type card, but it was frankly not very pretty. And then like Gearbox put out a Tiny Tina's Valentine's Day card, which, I mean, I guess you really have to ask who is the target audience for a lot of this showing up on Twitter. Otherwise, it's just not showing up in my feed at all. If they're posting it somewhere else like Instagram or something like that, in particular, you would assume that these Valentine's Day cards are for little kids. So Tiny Tina having a Valentine's Day card saying, "You make my heart roll for initiative," it's probably cutesy and fine. But if you took a moment to think about it, Tiny Tina's Adventures probably, on average, the age of a player of that game is going to be in their mid 25s, late 20s type ages. It's not little kids that are going to be playing Tiny Tina's Adventure, because it really is just Dungeons and Dragons with video game aspects, and that I'm fairly certain it's a rated M for mature games, so their stated target age rating is not the 10, 11, 12-year-olds that you'd potentially think were actually giving out video game Valentine's Day cards. If you think of it even further, it also gets a little creepy to have Tiny Tina, who is seemingly, I would guess she's probably around 10 or 11 herself, her being the main character of a Valentine's Day card, or the object in which is being depicted, can get inappropriate really fast. Certainly. There's a reason why if you went to a Hallmark or a card shop of any sort and looked at Valentine's Day cards on the wall, you're not going to see too many that have pictures of kids on them. And if you do see one with a kid on it, it's probably because it's a Valentine's Day card specifically for their mother. This is very possibly an offshoot, in the sense that there are just not very much that they don't want their adult female characters in video games to be depicted as attractive, where in decades previous you would have a Lara Croft Valentine's Day card. where it would be still very weird for a mid-20s adult to give a Tomb Raider card to their significant other of a similar age, but it definitely existed back then, and I didn't see any of that. The vast majority of the Valentine's Day card that were all in the same format was just a red background with text on it, and didn't even really have a heart shape on it. Perhaps this is in part an argument that romance does not sell anymore, or over in favor of like violence and anger in general. But yeah, you would think that like you would see the more recent games, and I don't think I'm going off on a wild tangent here. It would make more sense that like Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West character, you would have seen a Valentine's Day card around that to promote that. Bayonetta 3 just came out, you would have seen a Bayonetta 3 card, didn't see it. And Valentine's Day in Japan in particular is kind of a big deal, so it's very strange you didn't see a Bayonetta 3 type card. The Perfect Dark game is supposedly in development. It would have made a lot of sense for them to put out a Valentine's Day card with that character. James Bond, GoldenEye 007 just released. Why not have Pierce Brosnan in his polygon form on the Valentine's Day card? Why not have some of the female characters from that movie? I couldn't even name them, but I know every James Bond has at least a couple of love female interests or attractive females in it. You run into some dangers again if you did like Ellie from The Last of Us, but you could probably somewhat dance around that. Particularly if you're depicting the Ellie from the first game from part 1. Really would have to think about what games have even really been lost or released recently. Big games that they definitely want to promote, like Sea of Thieves has gotten a massive amount of promotion, so it would make a decent amount of sense to have see Microsoft promote something like that. WWE 2K has FIFA and WWE and things like that. They could have definitely picked any of the wrestlers from their games and made Valentine's Day cards off of that. Yeah, it just really seems like the industry doesn't put any effort into it. Which, in all fairness, on my YouTube channel, I didn't do anything for Valentine's Day either. There is, I suppose, a thought there, but with my pre-recorded footage, it would just mean I would need to play something that was somewhat romantic, which would almost certainly turn into something lewd, some kind of adult visual novel, and then that would be a long-running series to run throughout like the entirety of February, not just February 14th. So yeah, I didn't do anything for it either. Let's see if we can pull this off. When I was first running my channel in the first couple of years, I did try to have special like short videos before even YouTube Shorts happened. I guess in a weird way I was making YouTube Shorts before Shorts were even a thing, that would say like happy holidays of specific holidays. I didn't find them very well received at the time because nothing was very well received at the time. So yeah, nothing really came about from those. From those types of videos, which honestly I wasn't really expecting too much to come about from those videos, but they weren't worth the massive amount of artwork that was being done or being made. And the artwork was fairly inconsistent too, because it had to be something just from scratch. Nowadays, if I was going to revisit that idea, I would definitely make it a YouTube short, and it still would be something I'd have to try to think about as far as what could I release specifically that wasn't just going to be a single still image and maybe some voiceover over it. That's in particular video game and other forms of artistic creation have that advantage, in which they probably have artists on the payroll that they could say, hey, do a Valentine's Day special drawing. It doesn't have to be particularly that good, it just has to look like it's decent enough. And then we'll put it on Twitter for promotion, and since we have a promotion budget, we can pay our artists to do that. Yeah. So yeah, overall Valentine's Day on Twitter, at the current state of Twitter, which definitely seems like it's kind of falling apart, is this weird split between people that did absolutely nothing and then the lewd cosplayers I follow, which is half of the reason I'm still on Twitter, then just promoting their OnlyFans and things like that, and them maybe putting out a special like boudoir lewd image on Twitter, and maybe there would be something specifically Valentine's Day like about that picture, but not really, because it's pretty much all the same anyways. Let's see. I would also say Twitter is failing to really work well, because it does seem like it's constantly having problems as far as loading up the feed twice and showing me the same things. Like here's kind of an interesting example of them not doing anything for Valentine's Day. Here's kind of the basic cover image of Borderlands 3, and the news here is it's coming to PlayStation Plus on February 21st. And so you already have artwork that would work very well for a Valentine's Day card, and yet they didn't use it. Maybe they used it in previous years, but I doubt too many people would complain if you double dipped. Let's see if we can banish cards multiple times by activating this other guy. Nope, you can only activate it once. Oh well. And I guess you just attack here. I very possibly could have won here by just attaching another card. But I don't know if I had anything in the graveyard I could have attached. This guy is trying quite a bit, which I kind of find strange in the sense that feels like it would be at the point that he should really give up. I could basically just destroy everything at this point. Yeah, Fire Emblem Engage is kind of another example of a game you would think, well, this isn't Fire Emblem Engage, this is Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana, but this reminded me of Fire Emblem Engage. That's a game that came out recently. You would have thought that Nintendo would have put something out around that for Valentine's Day. It is really ridiculous the way the world is going, and has been going for a very long time, and that it just is a world that seems to really, really love to emphasize violence and really, really loves to try and censor anything to do with anything that's even close to sex, to the point where the idea of just like hugging, kissing, being romantically interested in another person is being de-emphasized. It's prudish, and prudish with a mix of just barbarianistic aggression. And yeah, it's hard. It's a far different direction from the love not war hippie movement of the past that I kind of wish would have been more organized and would have been more embraced and more successful. Let's see. I'm gonna do nothing now. Wait until it summons the thing, then I'm gonna destroy everything. I'm trying to scroll down my Twitter feed to actually show the red background Valentine's Day cards, but they all have just been replaced now by other things. I may not be able to scroll down far enough. That's another thing that seems to be fairly broken with seems to be fairly broken with Twitter. I guess you all know Jack put this Happy Discount Candy Day post here the day after today, 8 hours ago. Yeah, and we're starting late today anyway, so I probably should speed up. Yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, another game that's recently released. Who would have thought that you could have gotten a bump by just putting out a tweet around Valentine's Day, a Valentine's Day type message of some sort, just to remind people, hey, this game is out there. Hi-Fi Rush seemed like something people were really hyped about the second it was released, and since I don't really have a lot of people I'm following that aren't mainstream video game journalists, I don't know if that hype hasn't just completely died down. Metroid, also, you know, the Metroid remaster game just came out. It would made a lot of sense for them to do a Metroid Prime remaster Valentine's Day card with art. Didn't see anything like that. So, like, here it is. Insomniac Games, Happy Valentine's Day from Naughty Dog. We hope it lasts between us. Which, yeah. Just like real low effort stuff here. Arguably too many different shades of red between the logo red, the heart red, the pink in the background, and the red text. Those don't seem like they are even the same colors when you should probably have one, maybe two shades of red. And then the black and the white from the Naughty Dog logo is pretty extreme too, but it's just a dumb pun in text and nothing else. Sky did a lot to fix things for themselves, I guess. I don't think any of it's gonna help them though. Let's see. Summon this. Activate this. Summon this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Summon this. Activate that. Let's go ahead and activate this just for certainty's sake. Let's just play the card here just in case. Yeah, just get rid of that. I'm not sure if that was the right card to get rid of or if any of them mattered. One Shadal Fumism Master by using fusion materials listed. So, yeah. Probably a multiple Shadal cards in his graveyard. Okay. You know what? Just cut that attack in half. And while we're at it, Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Moving kind of slow today. I'm not getting rewards that look particularly special. Have we done enough of today's daily quests so far? Yeah, we have. So I think I want to just kind of call it here. I really barely had just woken up when I started the stream. In fact, I woke up this morning and I was just not even really able to open my eyes. They were not well in a good position. They had yet to even adjust to the brightness of the world. Okay, so yeah. 12 days to do the solo mode on top of everything else. And they are increasingly adding solo mode stuff too. Duel restart. Interesting. They have been fairly consistent. It's kind of crazy how much solo mode content they've added for how little it has mattered. Here is the Guerrilla Games one. Happy Valentine's Day with the Guerrilla logo. Great things are on the horizon. And so that they're referencing Horizon Zero West here. Like, I don't even know what media molecule or media maker or even stands for, but you make our dreams come true. It's just like ridiculously low effort. Although here we go, here's like a Valentine's message from WWE 2K, and the image is just a generic image showing Bret the Hart, I guess. Yeah, it's really nothing. Yeah. Or Injustice 2 Mobile here, showing the old version of Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, which I would hardly argue that the first costume of Harley Quinn and her personality, I don't think there was ever any storyline that would ever imply that there was even a relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn there. Now, if you're going to depict the more modern Harley Quinn with the twin ponytails and more of a blue color palette, as you see it in the Harley Quinn cartoon, adult cartoon, I'd be okay with that. But the idea of retroactively saying each version of Harley Quinn had this friendship / potential lesbian romance between her and Poison Ivy is weird. And even this Poison Ivy is weird in that she has this like bright orange hair. Yeah, so that seems fairly low effort. Like, ironically, here's a more modern suit as far as Harley Quinn, and yeah. And I don't think that's too crazy to say that, because pretty much in every super comic book character they've had multiple iterations, and in the multiple iterations there have been different events that have happened and different personality traits. So it's really the suit itself that is the thing that stays the same. I guess Plague Inc., I think he just reused old Valentine's Day cards they'd used in the previous year. And frankly, that's perfectly acceptable. If you made this when Plague Inc. was released, which was probably about 10 years ago, and you put this out every Valentine's Day, that would be fine. Plague Inc. having a zombies scenario. Yeah, I really wouldn't blame anybody for being redundant. Alright, well, let's go through the video game news then, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn on the blur now and make sure it's worked. Just do that. Let's see. Some of these articles still from Video Games Chronicle are old, so this one I think is fairly old. PUBG owner Crafton is opening its first Canadian AAA studio. PlayStation 5 just had its biggest sales week since launch in Japan. Arguably, this was February 5th. We're talking February 15th now, so me covering this news is confusing the issue by reporting on something that didn't happen in this week. Same may be true for the next Epic Games Store title being War Pips, February 16th through the 23rd. Okay, that's still fairly relevant because today's the 15th. Q Games is bringing Pixel Junk Scrappers Deluxe to PS4 and PS5 this year. It's also coming to the Nintendo Switch. Let's see. Bobby Kotick accused Sony of trying to sabotage the Microsoft Activision takeover. Adam Ruins Everything, or the guy from Adam Ruins Everything, on his YouTube channel, since Adam Ruins Everything has been cancelled, put out a video. He doesn't put out very many videos. They're highly polished and fairly researched, but he really should probably just lower his quality a little bit and put out more videos. But he put out a video particularly talking about how mergers are ruining the United States, if not the world, and they aren't even really helping shareholders so much. The HBO Time Warner merger is probably a great example of that, where Warner Brothers and HBO just got merged, and I'm probably getting even the company names wrong here. WB got acquired by somebody, and the shares are tanked at the moment, on top of a ton of consolidation. And so he definitely makes an argument that mergers like this are more about consolidating power, either power in the market or just political influence, or power over something, over people in general, more than it is about making money. Yeah. So there are definitely some people that are starting to get into political positions that are trying to push against the "we're always going to approve" mergers. It honestly would probably be much better for society as a whole if the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger was not allowed at all, and then Activision Blizzard was just forced to be its own company and then wallow in its own poor management and filth, and either fall apart or go bankrupt or be broken up. Arguably, Microsoft's actions feel like they're trying to fix the poor management at Activision Blizzard by allowing Microsoft to take over, when the probable better fix, or at least a solution that should be put out there, is that Activision Blizzard should have been broken up itself as a merged company, and people like Bobby Kotick should potentially be barred from being in charge of companies. Bobby Kotick, just as a bad manager, should not be allowed to do it. Not that he's potentially even done anything illegal, just poorly. Like, arguably, if a company does go bankrupt and all the board members, all the C-suite members were then barred from being in running any company for 7 years, the time of like a bankruptcy, that would be an interesting extra penalty, an extra punishment for running a company poorly. Yeah. Of course, they could always get puppets to do their bidding. Moving on, Nacon was going to show off Robocop and Golem next month, and I guess they're still going to do that. A Plus edition of Sonic Origins has reportedly been rated in Korea. We have not heard anything more around this. I should point out, though, for the Sonic Origins art, they really did a terrible job with the nose and the eye here. They should have either changed her eye line so she was looking more to the side, so she has like one pupil further away from the nose, because it's almost like it's touching her nose, and arguably the art style here is just really bad in the first place. And what's the deal with having only one eyes that connect in the middle for two characters and then not for the other characters? I have no idea, but it's even worse on this one. Yeah. You would think that somebody would have cared, but then again, I guess at a certain level, if people actually cared about Sonic, they probably would make good Sonic games. I also question if there wasn't a time in which Sonic had only 3 fingers, and that they've added a 4th finger to Sonic. No, being a Japanese game, I imagine they always took care to always have 4 fingers. They don't want Sonic to look like he was in the Yakuza and he cut off his pinky or something. Let's see. Alan Wake 2 is now playable start to finish, which really means nothing. Bobby Kotick will absolutely remain. This is all the same stuff. I should have filtered through this faster. Let's see. Tears of the Kingdom's file size makes it Nintendo's largest Switch game to date at 18.2 gigabytes. The game is bigger than Breath of the Wild. I don't know how they got the file size. Oh, the eShop tells you how big it is. This is an interesting bit of information just to show how incredibly small the Nintendo games still are. Although 18 gigabytes is a lot, it's not a super amount. It is pushing to the point of Blu-ray size. DVDs, double-sided DVD was like 8 gigabytes, double-layered DVD. And I don't think the DVD technology ever got past 2 layers and on one side. Whereas Blu-rays, I feel like their technology has improved to the point where either you can put more space, more data on a single layer, or you can do multiple layers. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's 4 to 8 layers that you can do on one of those 4K UHD discs, and at least 2 layers on a standard Blu-ray disc. I wouldn't be surprised if what they do is they put the 4K data on the extra layers, and then if you play a Blu-ray, 4K Blu-ray in a regular Blu-ray player, you just get the 1080p data. Yeah, and you don't read the extra layers. That would be a pretty good way for the technology to work, frankly, is that you could always invent a new technology with some extra layers under it, and on that you have just extra video data. But yeah, it definitely seems like you're going to need a disk drive and a hard drive in a Switch 2, whatever the next Nintendo console is, because games are just going to get bigger, and you're going to get much bigger, since I'd say at least 80 to 90% of your size is the visual graphics and the textures. So once you start getting even closer to 1080p than the Switch is at the moment, as far as just a base resolution, you're going to need a Blu-ray reading disk drive of some sort. The eMCC flash is not going to be big enough and cheap enough, and like micro SD card or any other kinds of flash or ROMs that you make is just not going to be big enough or fast enough. And arguably, the advantage of having games on a ROM would have been that the games loaded faster. And while you do see that in some cases with Switch games, you also see that it isn't instantaneous in Switch games like it really would like to be. NES games, on the other hand, didn't have loading. I don't think there's a single loading screen on any NES game at all. But that's really not a fair comparison. But yeah, there definitely is loading even now. Moving on, let's see. We talked about this. So Sega and Yoko Taro's 404 game set reimagined Sega games as women, and then oddly the and this is funny how they call them women when I would call them anime girls, and I think that probably is more accurate, I guess, depending on the term you want to use. But it's also weird in that for each game they are making a anime girl, and then these anime girls seem to be fighting against a world taken over by Sega, and Sega is the bad guy. So it's almost like Sega wanted their name in the game and did not care how it was used at all. And in all fairness, if Sega was only interested in having its properties used and its name around, that's, I guess, what it's going to get. Also, if Sega was to say, well, the real enemy is Nintendo, that would be a little bit weird too, to say like Sega is fighting N-Corp, even if you don't name it, but it's just a big red N. That wouldn't make any sense. Sega doesn't really have a natural enemy like it might have back in the Sega Genesis day, Master System's day, where Sega does what Nintendo don't. Those types of advertisements. Like, no, Sega very much works with Microsoft and PlayStation and Nintendo, and they wouldn't have anybody. They could go against somebody like Square Enix or Konami, but even then, I think they are probably on good terms with all those companies and wouldn't want to do that. So they could create a fictional company, but even if they did create a fictional company, it would feel like people would try to make it look like they were fighting against Nintendo. So by having Sega in their own Sega game be the bad guy, they save themselves that hassle. Still sounds like a very weird game from what we've seen. It definitely feels like Yoko Taro's influence is very heavy in this. It is somewhat weird that you also have only one character from each Sega game. Like, that seems strange that you wouldn't eventually have more characters show up. And Virtual Fighter and Virtual Cop and Afterburner is a weird selection as far as Sega games to start with. But yeah, it at least is an interesting looking premise compared to what it could have been. It could have been absolutely nothing, just a boring generic mobile game. Yeah, again, same stories. We're going over stories, particularly where Video Games Chronicles was repeating themselves. So UK sales being double those of January 2023, January 2022. Oh yeah, I guess part of the reason why I didn't accomplish anything yesterday was I was watching that Clarkson's Farm Season 2, which I was getting a lot of like Facebook ads to watch Clarkson's Farm Season 2. And so yeah, I watched all of it, and well, it definitely is trying to make an argument that the local councils in the UK are petty and vindictive and unwilling to allow anybody to do anything they want to do with their own property. They actually don't make as good of an argument as I think they did. They think they did, because at a certain level, I kind of agree with where the council is coming from, in that you have this United States Amazon.com production company basically funding Jeremy Clarkson to pretend to be a farmer for educational purposes more than actually trying to put his 100% full focus on farming. And then he gets bored of that and Season 2 comes around, and so now he wants to make a restaurant, which he had already set up a shop which had boiled down to nothing more than selling merchandise and bringing in tourists more than selling just what was actually grown on the farm. There's kind of a lack of long-term commitment there, and they know that, and he really failed. And I think Jeremy Clarkson in particular is probably just not good at humbling himself down to the level of the tiny dictators that run a local council to make sure all of the permits and things were done at the first part. And so yeah, once you piss off a permits department on one thing, they're going to screw you over, and it's probably not fair. Inherently, I would argue, from an American's perspective looking in, that most of the local councils and local authorities in the UK probably need to be shut down, just completely consolidated under a single, more federal Secretary of State, probably, authority. And there should be massive projects that are greenlit to build. For the most part, they need to focus on housing, modern houses with modern appearances, because they need to look modern to be done well. Big, like Tokyo style towers need to be built in small cities, and small cities need to be destroyed as far as their smallness and turned into large cities. They need to get people out of London in particular, and that's something Tokyo really fails at too, is that there's just this one mega city in Japan and then a whole bunch of small cities outside of Tokyo that don't want to grow and don't want to change and are just falling apart. And they're saying, well, we like this small town feel, we like that everything looks old, and it's just not reasonable. Like sure, people like the pyramids too, but we can't have a world of pyramids 2,000 years or 4,000 years later. The times have to change. But yeah, I really can't fully side with them, because they definitely controlled the footage and tried to put themselves in the best light. But even at that, you can see how they built this lambing shed, and then he very quickly, after one season, gave up on the lambing and now wants to turn it into a restaurant, which is not a farm. And how he's attracted way too many people. And there are some simple solutions there that it takes him way too far, way too late to realize. As far as the store shop, the farm shop, should definitely be like by appointment only, and you have to buy tickets, or you have to have a membership, um, and it's you give out like VIP passes or memberships to the local people of the area, or you could literally say you have to have an ID from this region. Like, we only service this region, do not come, or by appointment only through a website, because there's far too many people showing up, and they're not really showing up to buy eggs and milk and things like that. They're showing up to buy hats and T-shirts and hopes of seeing Jeremy Clarkson, which they almost certainly aren't. And the restaurant would be the same situation, where I doubt you're going to be able to build a restaurant on a farm on the outskirts of a city that would really encourage people from inside the small city to visit and look at it and be able to eat there. I imagine the prices would be really too high also. But yeah, there is major problems with the what they call NIMBYs, not in my backyard. The city folk and the city councils not really accommodating any real growth or even experimentation as far as running a business, and that's inherently why you don't see a lot of, to get back to video games, since I am mostly rambling here, that's why you don't see a lot of video game companies in the UK, in Britain, Ireland, places like that, is because even if you were going to try and build an office and create jobs and have a video game company, you have both federal and local governments bending over backwards to make it impossible to just build the building, just to have the parking lot, just to have any growth at all. Where at least in the United States, which is not really much better as how we do it in the United States, but we are so incredibly pro-business in the United States that we allow almost anything, to the point where we have like derailments in Ohio because business has just been allowed to not even care about its safety procedures, and they've leaked poisonous chemicals all throughout a portion of Ohio, and then there's been like 2 other toxic chemical spills that have happened recently, and that is seemingly because some regulations were rolled back in the last presidency. So yeah, it really only takes one person in the wrong appointment to all of a sudden roll back some protection measure, and then that just lets companies that are already violating the law and not following the rules go even further and violate the law even more. In particular, I think just our transport industry, as far as trucking and railway, is something that probably should be nationalized. Anyways, it's just not something that is financially viable to do in a safe manner at the same time. The only way you can do trucking is to work on extremely tight margins, I hear, by cheating as many laws as possible. The most interesting part of Clarkson's farm, and I'll stop talking about Clarkson's farm here, he had a mandolin trying to like shred potatoes, and immediately, and this probably highlights the personality of Jeremy Clarkson in a nutshell, immediately didn't use a safety guard and didn't know what to do. And so within the very first swipe, he cuts his thumb almost completely off. Like he does a vertical slice on his thumb to the point where it almost completely would have peeled back the entirety of his skin all the way down to his bone. On the very first slice of using a mandolin, which is probably the most dangerous thing you can use in the in a kitchen because people don't think it's scary. You get a big old butcher knife, people know that's scary, people take a little bit more time, a little bit more precaution with it. But the mandolin just doesn't look scary to people, and so they don't ever take the precaution. And it is never acceptable to just put a food directly on a mandolin without a finger guard or a towel if you have to do that. Ideally, you would have a cut glove, like a chain armor glove, on just to really, really reduce the chance of cutting yourself. Ideally, you really don't even use a mandolin. They have some other devices now, particularly for home prep, that would that moves your hands much further away from the blades and are a lot safer. They're ones where you have a handle at the top that you kind of slap down, up and down. And in a professional kitchen, I imagine you're not using a mandolin that often anyways. It's too slow. I also watched Lockwood & Co. on Netflix. Yeah. Now that I think about it, it really is no surprise. What happened is I had something non-YouTube to do, and then that took up the first few hours of the day. And by that point, I was just not mentally in the mood to do anything else. So I then watched Lockwood & Co. on Netflix, which I'll say is a pretty good translation of a young adult novel to a sci-fi Netflix show. It kind of ends fairly well, but doesn't fully reveal anything, so I definitely would want to see a second season of it. It wraps up its main story and main focus. It's kind of slow to reveal that the main story is all going to be connected. It almost feels like you would have a different story each episode, and it's not really the case. Eventually, there is one main focus that happens. But yeah, it doesn't wrap up everything, so if it was canceled at its current spot, it'd be fairly moderately disappointing. But yeah, it does now. I do realize now I spent, after a certain point in the afternoon, I spent most of the day watching Netflix series from beginning to end, and then watching an Amazon Prime series in Clarkson's Farm too. I don't know if I'll really get back to Naruto. I've lost a lot of interest in it. Now I'm at the beginning of season 7, and it's just a bunch of filler episodes and a bunch of get to know the other characters that they're obviously a little more interested in, with Naruto barely being the main protagonist in the series. Which, honestly, if those episodes had happened during season 1 and the whole Sasuke narrative arc, which is where they're supposed to be training for 3 years to find Sasuke, or finding Sasuke before 3 years is up, and they're not doing really anything around that, all of that potentially shouldn't have happened, and instead they should have had the filler episodes at the beginning to introduce the characters. Yeah. Video game news though. Man, I'm just rambling. Yeah, EA Sports is reportedly close to a £5 million deal with the Premier League. Evidence mounts of a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Switch hardware. The Super Mario Bros. Super Bowl ad. Double Fun in its 22-hour documentary. Let's see. Hogwarts Legacy's first week sales were 80% higher than Elden Ring's, which really highlights how popular Harry Potter is compared to a Game of Thrones fan, particularly knowing that George R.R. Martin wrote the story for Elden Ring, which they they tried to advertise that fairly well, but without just Game of Thrones in the title, I think a lot of fans wouldn't have known that. Plus, in all fairness, there is a more recent wound in the hearts of fans for Game of Thrones fans with the poor ending of the TV series and the lack of a book ending still for Game of Thrones, where at least you have a complete story that you probably like in the Harry Potter books, and a lot of people have already, even before Hogwarts Legacy came out, has already decided just to say we don't really care about J.K. Rowling Twitter drama, and if anything, the sales definitely bear it out. Twitter drama in general, obviously, is nothing and should just be inoculated against people following it. Because, yeah, this whole slacktivism movements of boycott Harry Potter Legacy or spoil the ending of Harry Potter's Hogwarts Legacy. I probably have been calling it Harry Potter's Legacy, haven't I? Yeah, that kind of slacktivism is not something people care about or engage with, or is helpful even for a trans acceptance movement in any way, because it's not making anybody more likely to accept transgendered people, and it's not in any way directly helping transgendered people. So yeah, the war for hearts and minds amongst video games is ridiculous, or the war to affect culture in any way via video games is ridiculous. This is hardly the right field to potentially make those arguments. If you want to make a real impact as far as trans acceptance, the number one thing to do would be to have more transgendered people represented positively in individual communities, in church groups and churches in general. And if that means you just have to straight up start new churches and then invite as many people and be as accepting as possible to get as many cisgendered people in those churches, and slowly show them to be within your same morals group and same community, that would be the most effective way to do it. And at a certain point you'll just have splits within communities of this is the church that absolutely would never accept trans, and this is the church that does accept trans, and you just have to fight on that battlefield to see whose church is more successful and has more attendance. Why it should be fought in the churches? I mean, that's just where people define their beliefs and their morals, for the most part in the United States. Yeah, there really isn't any other public square that people generally attend or think. Let's see. Moving on. The original Metroid Prime devs criticized the remaster for omitting the credits. We talked about that. Last of Us Episode 6 trailer shows a family reunion. Dead Island 2 is releasing on April 21st, a week earlier than previously expected. This is all old stuff. So I've spent like 30 minutes going through old articles. I'm going to have to do a much better job at this. Cosmic Smash is being reimagined for PlayStation VR 2. The PlayStation 5 led US console sales in January as Modern Warfare 2 barely, or I don't know why I added a barely there, held off Dead Space. Last of Us Part 1 Firefly Edition is now available for pre-purchase for PC. Launch trailer for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 Season 2. Let's see. This is the same story again. European sale instead of UK sales. I guess it's slightly different story. In January, we're reportedly up over 200% year over year. All this really means is that there was twice as many like PlayStation 5s available for purchase this January compared to last January, where there's a major shortage. And it's fairly consistent regardless of where you say it. So if I was a particularly unscrupulous mainstream video game journalist, I would find every single country's sales data I could find and write a different article to make it look like the PlayStation 5 is selling a ton of sales, when really I'm saying just the same thing over and over again. Worldwide, on average, it seems like the PlayStation 5 sold twice as much this January than last year, when there was a major shortage. To an average layman, that is one story. You don't need to then break it down and say, well, UK sales would double, European sales would double, French sales would double, Spain sales would double, Germany's sales would double. I mean, you could literally go through every individual state in Europe and say the exact same thing. You wouldn't even have to do the research, really. You'd want to be somewhat accurate to make sure like France actually was double and it didn't just average out European wise to over 200%. But yeah, the stats, when you're breaking it down like that, don't mean anything. It's just redundant. Let's see. I did get some more, try to do some more research on this, obviously, because it caught my attention as far as this Witcher 3 Vagina mod being added. They seemingly, I think CD Projekt has admitted that it was included by a employee who was overly ambitious. Neither Kotaku nor Video Games Chronicle was actually willing to show any examples of what the mods were, but in the Kotaku article it did seem to describe it as, I think there's basically adding either a bikini landing strip type hair variant or a hairless, totally bald variant. Now, and apparently it is for a lot of characters, secondary characters, third characters, NPC characters, which then I have to really wonder what is the other mods or scenario that's happening here in which you're seeing the other characters, NPC characters, particularly third-party character, secondary characters, naked, because that just seems weird. There must be another mod at that point, or some kind of outfit mod, which is generally how mods like this tend to work. If you go to Nexus Mods to look at it, you have to make an account to Nexus Mods, and I didn't want to create an account just to see a couple of screenshots. But yeah, it seems like it really is just two models, two textures that are then being randomly applied, I guess, to everybody, which 2 is better than 0, I suppose, but I guess an interesting question would be, what is the situation of the genitals of characters in CD Projekt Red's other game, Cyberpunk 2077, because that game by far is much more sexual. Like, it's childishly, ridiculously sexual in parts, from what I've heard. So I would assume that they probably already rendered something there, whether it's a cyberpunk robotic genitalia for a lot of characters. And I would assume that there's probably a higher chance of seeing nudity. If it's anything like the Cyberpunk Netflix series, there was really a lot of nudity and sex in that. I have to assume that some of the cyberpunk stuff comes directly from the Cyberpunk tabletop game, and that the world itself is built that way. Um, let's see. This is probably our first bit of new news. Way too late. Activision Blizzard employees are being forced to return to the office soon as claimed working full-time from home is reportedly being abolished to the anger of some workers. Inherently, that's always going to be the case. If I was to start a new business right now, I would probably force everybody to work in the office to start with, but very quickly I would like to move towards working from home, depending on what the job is and depending on what people are doing. Obviously, if I was starting a business where everybody's working on a factory line, you can't work from home for that, or most employees wouldn't be able to work from home from that. But if I was making a video game company, I would ideally not even have an office so much as probably just renting out a workspace like once a week. Just renting out a meeting room at most. But particularly for game development, I have a hard time imagining too much needs to actually happen face to face versus just instant messaging, texting, emailing, doing Skypes, FaceTiming, whatever technology you use. And honestly, I think there's a real experiment to be made if you had a honest employer that wasn't literally just trying to have the middle management justify their jobs or the upper management justify their jobs. Like, if you did a real experiment for game development 100% from home, then you could probably find that it's super cheaper and fairly efficient. Like, some of it may very well not scale very well. When you have one programmer working alone, that's fine. When you have two programmers, that's still probably okay. But when you get to like 100 programmers, it might be a case that you actually do need 100 programmers in cubicles next to each other. Maybe not. But it really is the work from home for schooling or for working was not done with anybody actually trying. And inherently, that's what I say with a lot of situations, is people are either too stupid to actually give it a fair shot or not willing to give it a fair shot. Anything new, a fair shot. It doesn't matter what it is. People are stuck in their ways. For Activision Blizzard in particular, it would make a lot of sense for them to try and maintain as much work from home as possible, because that keeps the accusations of inappropriate actions amongst their managers to a minimum. Like, you can't have drunken parties where you're like groping employees or things like that just to make a random fake scenario if there is no parties, if nobody's around, if nobody's in the office. Let's see, moving on. WWE 2K23 full roster lists 178 superstars available at launch. Yep. Kratos was originally going to have a different fate in God of War Ragnarok. Apparently, in an early fight in the game, was going to have a drastically different outcome. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were thinking of killing off Kratos, because he is really the thorn in what the new God of War series is, in that he's still covered in ash and has chains around him from being tricked into killing his family. He still looks like a Spartan. I think he was a Spartan. So he just visually does not match the boy who looks a little bit more realistic. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, they were thinking of killing him off in the Thor fight at the very beginning of the game. And yeah, that really wouldn't have worked. Because it would be very hard to transition to the boy character, who I don't even know if he has an actual name, and play as him. I just don't think people would have really wanted that. What would have had to have happened, I think, if you were going to go that direction, is you would have had to kill off Kratos, and then the boy would have had to have grown up in a flash forward to at least a teenage, late teenage or early 20s age, and be mostly an adult. And then you would probably be able to play as that character, but then that wouldn't be a character you really would know. And then how that character would be the new God of War is questionable, because you have to have something that is labeled the God of War in a God of War series. You could see the first game being the childhood of the boy, the second game being the young adult age of the boy, and heck, you could even maybe throw in some romance in there, and then the third game being the older adult of the boy, even to the point of him potentially dying. And then you could have a trilogy that was secretly about the boy as a character instead of technically being around Kratos, although I'm not sure that these two games are really about Kratos either. I think, if anything, it's mostly just about killing monsters in the Norse religion, which eventually you're going to kill all the Norse gods, and you're going to have to move forward to the next gods, which isn't that Christianity at that point? Yeah. Yeah, you would be better off to send Kratos somehow through a time portal, have Kronos show up somehow and throw him back in time so he can fight some of the early Egyptian gods and things like that. Get as far away from Christianity as possible. But yeah, you throw him into China and fight some of the Chinese gods. That might work too, although that wouldn't sell very well in the West if he's fighting like the Monkey King or something like that. God of War Ragnarok Trials now available on PlayStation Plus Premium. Yep. Here's a depiction of the boy in Ragnarok, and he's probably 14, 15, 16 at this time, but I would have physically wanted to see him at least a foot taller and more muscular. Yeah. God of War, again, is a series with its reboot that has been very much all about the violence and nothing about any romance or sex or anything like that. Like, the mother, the wife, whatever, is killed off at the very beginning of the reboot. Or even before the beginning of the reboot, and just not even there. Moving on, Microsoft will defend its Activision Blizzard deal at an EU hearing next week on February 21st. Hogwarts Legacy patch is coming to the Xbox and PC today, but the PlayStation 5 update has been delayed. Official patch notes have been released. PS5 Collector's Edition fix is also coming. So yeah. Yeah, them having to patch games as soon as they're released is a nightmare. I wish games actually worked on day one. Let's see. Ubisoft is holding a crossplay test for its free-to-play first-person shooter X-Defiant this week, which I'm sure is not much of a real test, as it is just an advertisement for X-Defiant. It's weird you have like a Splinter Cell character here. So I wonder if this is all supposed to be in the Splinter Cell universe, or if this is just a collection of random people. See, Resident Evil Village's VR trailer shows the game running on a PlayStation VR 2, which, okay. I mean, was there any real question that a game that was going to be released on the VR2 can run on the VR2? Like, the important word that would have to be in this headline to make it worth a worthy story would be if runs poorly or runs well. Free DLC will also be available on day one. Yeah, without actually making an opinion or stating an opinion. As far as performance, just seeing something running is kind of a not a big enough thing to really report on. Some of February's PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games have leaked. Sony has officially announced February's PlayStation Plus catalog and classic titles. Increasingly, and I don't know if this is to be blamed on Video Games Chronicle or the creators of Horizon Zero Dawn, increasingly though, we've seen people use this screenshot. And a lot of times I've seen this on Twitter from the publisher and creators of Horizon Zero Dawn, where this was the LGBTQ plus specific image where they've just taken a screenshot and added face paint, or maybe they actually did it in game, and it has these little triangles which I believe are for transgender people. So somehow this has just become the default image that's being used, when this was an image originally just for the month in which they were pretending to support that issue. Everybody on Twitter was pretending to support that issue by changing their logos and things like that. Which, let's not even get into the message as much as just the accuracy issue on that. That's not how the character is going to look when you play the game. It's just not going to happen that way. And it does potentially open up a message as to, are they trying to imply that Aloy was actually transgendered this whole time? Yeah. Which mark this day, I guess, if they did come out with another Horizon game, or some kind of fan fiction, or some kind of official, not fan fiction, but like official canon or side story or comic, and then they did say she was transgender, it would fall in line with like the fatter faces and the fatter cheeks too. But yeah, backdooring or retconning a character to be transgendered when they really weren't is not going to make anybody happy. It's not going to make anybody on either side of the debate happy at all. Moving on, we've got about 6 more Video Games Chronicle articles. Man, I'm moving slow today. Game Freak says it's very important to continue making non-Pokemon games. I would counter that statement and that headline with, if it's very important for Game Freak to make non-Pokemon games, which I'll agree with, they should probably do a better job about their other games being made, instead of low-effort solitaire games based around horse racing that would only possibly have any chance of selling in Japan. Pocket Card Jockey Remake was recently released only on Apple Arcade, so yeah. If they really were trying to do something, they need to do something more. And if anything, I think Game Freak, their situation highlights one of the problems of having a publisher in the first place, in that Nintendo almost certainly funds 100% of the development of Pokemon games and are paying the employees of Game Freak to make Pokemon games. And when they aren't making a Pokemon game for Nintendo, they don't have any kind of war chest of cash or any kind of support or funding to make anything else. And part of the reason why they don't have any war chest of cash is because Nintendo is taking almost all the profits from Pokemon games too. Because inherently, Pokemon games get advertised like crazy. So it is doing the Hollywood math of them having Game Freak develop a Pokemon game and then not paying Game Freak until it becomes profitable, but the Pokemon game can never be profitable that much, but because they're spending 3 to 4 times the budget, if not way more, the development budget on advertising the Pokemon games to kids. Nintendo is a great example of a vertical monopoly too, in that they are not only the publisher, but they are also the platform holder, and they're setting the prices and setting the advertising. There's really nothing Game Freak could do to convince more or fewer people to buy Pokemon games, or Game Freak can't make a Pokemon game and then put it on a different console. And yes, technically the Pokemon company owns Pokemon and may be technically the publisher, but Nintendo owns and controls the Pokemon company, so let's just call it Nintendo. Although, in this story, it may not be for much longer that Nintendo is the big dog in the fight, because the Saudi Arabian public interest group, I assume, once again, they're calling it the Kingdom's Investment Fund, has again increased its stake in Nintendo. It now owns 7.08% of the Japanese company. It acquired 5.01% in May 2022. So it still would be a long time before Saudi Arabia has significant influence. But even at 7%, it definitely has influence as far as Nintendo games are concerned. And there's just kind of no telling what that influence really buys as far as Nintendo games. It will be a long time and a very slow adjustment as far as what Saudi Arabia could do to influence Nintendo games. But there definitely is some common ground, I think, that Nintendo themselves may take action to try and please the Saudi Arabian investment group, even if they aren't asked directly by the Saudi Arabian investment group. Things like removing females from the games. If all of a sudden we see less of a focus on Metroid games, which would be hard to do less of a focus because they already don't care about Metroid games, but less of a depiction of Samus Aran, less of a depiction of Princess Peach, Pauline. Like Odyssey really sets a high point in that you bring back Pauline and Princess Peach, and there's Daisy, and like there's several Mario female characters, Toadette, that were introduced over the launch of the Switch as either introduced or extra focused on. If all of a sudden you start to see less and less of that happen, that might be actions being taken to please Saudi Arabia. If all of a sudden we start to see Middle Eastern characters in Nintendo games, there's never been anything that really felt much like a Middle Eastern character. If there was a character like that, it probably was closer to a Lawrence of Arabian type character. Like I could imagine there might have been a snake character in some Nintendo game that had a like cloth turban on his head, something like that. And there's been genies before and things like that, but recently there really hasn't been that much. But if all of a sudden we start to see major Middle Eastern characters or Mario in Saudi Arabian type dress, that would be a pretty obvious influence. But I wouldn't be surprised if the influences and actions are much more subtler, much smaller than any of that. Moving on, Multiversus daily peak on Steam player count has dropped by more than 99% since launch. The game dropped below a daily peak of 1,000 players for the first time this week. It's not super surprising on this. First of all, because of the Warner Brothers merger, it doesn't seem like there's been any major influence or focus on Multiversus, but Multiversus itself always had this major problem in which it just could not have ever done. Let's see if we can get the SteamDB listing there. It really just could not have done the numbers that you would have wanted to do it, because it just doesn't have enough of a lineup of characters you care about, or characters you even want to see fight, because inherently I don't think I want to see Shaggy fighting Wonder Woman anywhere as much as you would want to see like Mario fighting Link, because those are two characters that tend to be fairly violent in fighting other characters anyways, where not so much as far as like Shaggy. Wonder Woman fights all the time, so it makes some sense there, but Jake from Adventure Time doesn't feel like a real fit. Also, all of the animations that Multiversus had were all just Warner Brothers animations, so you have a wide variety of different types of characters and different types of animations there anyways. So the last big peak here was November 10th. And yeah, people tried it out. They probably found it had too much grind or too much microtransactions, or just didn't have enough content being added to it. And so you have a very quick drop off. This is very similar to like even a successful video on YouTube. It's just in the first few minutes you have a quick drop off and people lose interest. At least video games, that's in the first few weeks. So yeah, if you take from July to 6 weeks or 6 months from that, you were already probably in a pretty bad position even then as far as its launch window. And there are some peaks of Twitch viewers, which is the blue line. So there were points where some streamer probably got people's attention playing Multiversus, but then the attention very quickly just drops down again. But the actual people playing the game, that is the real yellow line, and you can see that's not done well. Let's see. People apparently were streaming this game before it was released. Oh, speaking of streaming, I guess I should mention that American McGee did put out their design guide, design Bible PDF. They also on their YouTube channel put out several soundtracks for Alice Asylum, the third Alice game that they would like to see made. So he did kind of keep his word as far as the timing, because he had promised that it would be in early 2023, so it's put out. Does this mean you really are a step closer towards the game being made or released? Not really. If anything, you might be a step further, because why would you release the design Bible to the public if you're in actual negotiations to have the game made, why spoil the game like that? So yeah, there's still a lot of room for a surprise where Alice Asylum actually gets picked up and they start to actually develop the game out of this pre-production stage into production stage. But on top of that surprise, you then would also have to be surprised that the game actually gets finished and released. And you're still probably 2 to 4 years away from that. Pre-production is not the part that should take the vast majority of development in a game. You arguably don't have to have much pre-production at all to just start programming a game and make changes on the way. At least get to a point where you get out of a alpha stage, and at that point you then could have the concepts and the gameplay mechanics set in stone once you leave alpha. Avalanche is looking into a fix for Hogwarts Legacy because they're getting stuck under the map and or in objects, which, yeah, I don't know if the most recent patch fixed that or not, or if that's the next patch potentially that might fix that. Sony released a teardown videos for the PlayStation VR 2 and its Sense controllers, which this is, I guess, the new standard is that you are going to officially put out unboxing videos and teardown videos for your own products. In particular, for a $500 VR headset, it probably makes a lot of sense to do a teardown yourself and control the message and control how it's shown. Instead of having some YouTuber tear up their $500 headset and break it. I wouldn't even be surprised if they bring in people like Linus from Linus Tech Tips to do teardowns on an official basis. But then you would have to find a YouTuber who's willing to be hamstrung by the PR team and as far as what they do and what they say. So Linus may not be a good candidate for that. Let's see. February's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles have been confirmed. It includes Horizon Forbidden West, The Quarry, Resident Evil 7, and The Forgotten City, which The Forgotten City really has become the forgotten game at this point. Yeah, there was a lot of hype for that game back when it was a Skyrim mod, and less hype once it got released. I guess maybe in Horizon there's just face paints in general as an option, and you can customize the character that way. But yeah, this too is not really an iconic screenshot that you would expect people to use as far as Alloy. And arguably, of all your options here, is Alloy the best character to promote as a screenshot? Probably. I don't think you would go with the Quarry or Resident Evil 7. So yeah, I can't really complain too much. Take note how these box cover arts are never used as a screenshot by Video Games Chronicle. They always go and find a screenshot more of a human, something that would catch more clicks instead. Free PlayStation Plus online multiplayer weekend has been announced for the PS4 and PS5. Access to online games will be offered without charge from February 18th through the 19th. Now I have to question, why not do February 14th? Why not do the week before Valentine's Day? Maybe you don't want to encourage gamers to play video games and get in fights with their girlfriends because they're playing video games around the Valentine's Day weekend, but it would be kind of hard over this weekend now to say love is playing with your best friend or something, having an event like that and tying it into Valentine's Day. And they're clearly not. They're just calling it a free online multiplayer weekend, which they've done those before. But yeah, you could have definitely tied it into Valentine's Day. But yeah, it seems like nobody cares. I wonder if a lot of that has to do with just the way the school systems are now, where they've ruined the idea of giving Valentine's Day cards to people you actually care about versus having to just give it to everybody. They've just ruined the potential fun there. Moving on, first Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 Season 3 details have been confirmed. Check out this article if you're interested. Although in all fairness, the schools are probably just reflecting the attitudes of the parents in that case too. And then Xbox February update introduces new energy saving features. Players can also choose to hide game art on their home screen, which that's probably something that should have been there day one, because I imagine there is some game art out there that's a little lewd, if not straight up inappropriate, that you wouldn't want to just launch your Xbox and have your younger sibling see or have your parents see. Let's see. Moving on to the Gematsu things. Let's try to burn through these a lot faster. Sea Smash VRS announced for the PlayStation VR 2. Blue Reflection Sun launches February 21st in Japan. This is a PC and smartphone game. It's interesting to have only one character facing the screen and doing a magical attack, and then another character looking backward, and then every other character just showing the back of the characters. If anything, it feels like that means one character is getting left behind and these other people are turning their backs to her, or vice versa. Plus, it's just kind of lazy animation at that point, where you just have to do a rough animation as far as the details of most of these characters, and then you have to put a lot more detail in the face and just the outfit and such. Even on the skin tone, you can see this character is much brighter lit, where everything else is just like a dull, soft color palette or marker drawing. Looks like it's probably marker. This Blue Reflection series does feel like it is getting off the ground. Now, unfortunately, there's probably been several series that have had multiple iterations and just not been popular enough to be relevant for somebody like me who's not going to play a ton of JRPGs. It's still very hard to say, let's play the Atelier series or the Blue Reflection series and skip the Final Fantasy series, for instance. Dragon Ball The Breakers Season 2 launches February 16th, featuring Vegeta, Yajirobe, Chi-Chi, and more. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Yajirobe. The Breakers, I think, is more of a adventure RPG type game, although it's not even tagged with RPG there. Whereas you still have Dragon Ball FighterZ probably being the most relevant fighting game around the Dragon Ball characters. And I do kind of question whether it's worth the time to try and go through the entire narrative storylines of the Dragon Ball universe, which is what a lot of these Dragon Ball games do. And then you just have a lot of Dragon Ball games in particular that have been made, and a lot of them eventually proving themselves to be pretty irrelevant. See, Boyfriend Dungeon is now available for the PlayStation 5. And see, again, this is just in time for Valentine's Day, and this image here, it looks like it was made for Valentine's Day, and yet I didn't see this image anywhere at all. And like, Video Games Chronicle did not cover this announcement of a game at all. I didn't see this being retweeted by anybody. Maybe in part I've messed up my own feed because of the way Twitter has messed up the feeds. Because if you only watch the people who are following, then maybe you're not seeing retweets by people you're following. I don't think that's the case. I'm fairly certain it isn't. But maybe that is. It does create a weird situation though, where you might have to jump between the feed, which is just full of advertisements and suggested content, or the following feed, which would be strictly only people you followed and not even retweets from the people you followed. Inherently, that would break the whole Twitter system, because Twitter is built around the idea of sharing and retweeting. So if you could hide the retweets from people, that'd be weird. Or if by default it was. A game called Park Beyond, Love Comes to Park Beyond trailer. Decorate your park with colorful Candyville themes. So yeah, I don't know what Park Beyond is. You have a very Willy Wonka-esque looking park. Lots of purples. Arguably, I don't know if this is so much a romantic looking image, or if this isn't more of a, this is a weird sci-fi image with weird glowing purple plants. It seems like this might be two guys in the park, which is okay, whatever. Noticeably, there might be a girl over here, but maybe a girl here too. But I imagine if this is the kind of game that I think it is, and let's just watch the trailer, this is probably a park sim way more than anything else. So that was a guy and a girl from the shape of her hips on the right. Yeah. Yeah, this is exactly what I assumed it was. It is a sim park. Which, that's an interesting thought as to why there aren't more romantic elements in parks. I guess inherently you are probably trying to get kids to go to your park, so it'd be weird if it was all romance all the time. That was weird. You have to hope that that was implying that was a father kissing a daughter there, and not just an incredible, unacceptable amount of age difference. But yeah, I guess that's why you've never seen romance. You'll have like Tunnel of Love thoughts in an amusement park and have like one ride, but you don't have an entire theme park that is about romance and love. Because even if you had like a puppy love situation, where you had like a 10-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl or whatever, or a 10-year-old boy even, like, you probably wouldn't encourage that yeah, old man, girl kissing on a heart-shaped merry-go-round. It seems a little too much. Also, you have like a couple old people, which I'm not going to complain about, a couple old people. But yeah, I don't even know if Disneyland or Disney World has anything like a Tunnel of Love. They probably don't. But definitely something weird in that decision in that trailer, and maybe the audio explains it better. I'm not listening to the audio. But it's an odd choice that, if anybody cared more about that trailer, that game probably would lead to some controversy. But you know, the things that might actually be controversial seem to have been drowned out by things that are more planned controversies. Either somebody has a beef with somebody else and thus they are trying specifically to cancel that person, or somebody wants a controversy around their product and they plan it to happen. A game called Moonstone Island has a romance trailer, so there definitely is a difference we're seeing here as far as Japanese publisher Gamatsu finding these romance things. Valentine's Day is still a big thing in Japan. I don't know if we really have time or any care to potentially watch this. This is like a Stardew Valley game, it looks like, where you are going to end up dating a bunch of people. Although it may be all girl on girl action because all I'm seeing is girls, but maybe that just means you play as a male character. Moving on, a roguelike bullet heaven / horde survivor game called Rhythm Storm has been announced for PC. I don't know what the concept of a bullet heaven would be. Is this just an attempt to get away from the phrase bullet hell? Or does it imply that like the more bullets are around and they hit you, the more powered up you get, and you don't have to actually dodge bullets, you're actively trying to create more bullets. Yeah. See if we can see some gameplay here and get an idea. I've never heard of this idea of bullet heaven. I've only heard of bullet hell. Mostly this seems like this is a rhythm game. So let's see the gameplay. XP is gained from enemy kills. Last enemy drops an upgrade. Seems to be moving around, which you'd probably move around a lot more if you were avoiding bullets than you would if you're trying to hit the bullets. I don't know if I'd even really call this a bullet hell game. I guess I probably would, but typically when I see bullet hell games, it's either a side-scrolling shooter or a shoot-'em-up game. It's not a top-down dodge asteroids type game. Seems to me like he's got bombs and he's using the bombs to avoid taking damage. Yeah. Definitely seems like there's an area of blue here of protection that he is maintaining, the player is maintaining, to imply that you're not trying to take damage. Remember, this is all being controlled by some rhythm mechanic, and that's where all this seizure-inducing flashing, I assume, is playing a role. So yeah, it looks like a little bit of a weird game. People might like it, people might not. I wouldn't be sure. A game called Charade Maniacs for Switch is coming to the West this summer, for fully localized for the first time in English. I assume this is a visual novel. Yeah, it's a Notome Young Maiden visual novel. Nice polish on the animations. A lot of detail in the backgrounds on these screenshots. Okay, we're still getting announcements of those, still seeing them go to the Switch. Noticeably, that game was not going to PC. So, if there is a PC version already released and it's getting an English patch, we'll have to get that announcement later if that does happen. A Romance Sylvania launches, a game called Romance Sylvania launches March 7th for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, and then later on Switch. Which, okay. That's certainly a thought, to have a Castlevania game, but throw romance into it. How is that really going to play? I don't know. If anything, looking at these characters, this really feels like it's probably more of a joke game and very possibly a visual novel and not even a Castlevania. Let's see. I'm seeing a collection of what looks like mini games at most, not the kind of platforming through a castle that I would have expected. I'm seeing a little bit of that, but those literally may just be cutscenes. And then I would say the pumpkin lady with big pumpkin breasts does seem like that is in a very different category as the other characters. Although I don't even know what this girl was, if she was supposed to be a monster of some sort. Was she supposed to be like a succubus, or was she just supposed to be a human? This apparently was previously going to come to PS4 and that's been cancelled. I'd want to see some actual gameplay from this game before I'd get hyped on this, because it definitely feels like this could just be a visual novel trying to sell itself as something else. Shin-Chan, Me and the Professor on Summer Vacation, The Endless 7-Day Journey, Physical Edition pre-orders open February 21st. That's a mouthful. Still don't know if I really would want to try and cover this if there even was a PC version of it. I'm not sure Shin-Chan is that relevant outside of Japan. I'd like to cover it if I had an infinite amount of time and energy, yes, but practically it's not very practical, and it's probably not much of a game, really. Let's see. Gematsu also has the Sense Controller teardown video, which you can see a screenshot of a lot of plastic pieces. A lot of components, a lot of plastic pieces. Ideally, you would want to try and get that parts count down if you were a product designer, and PlayStation, I imagine, push the parts count up to demand everything to be in white plastic. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these components also are just very necessary. Resident Evil Village for PSVR 2 gameplay trailer and demo launches February 22nd. According to Gematsu, Famitsu has its issue review scores for issue 1785. Oita Baipu Mystery Guide, The Warped Bamboo Lantern, getting 31 out of 40, so not particularly good. Theater Rhythm, The Final Bar Line, getting 35 out of 40, so actually pretty great as a game. And then Tortuga, A Pirate's Tale, getting 27 out of 40, so absolute garbage. Notably here too, not any real big names this week released. I don't even know when the next big name game is going to come out, although for me that tends to be fairly common, that a week happens and some new big name game comes out to my own surprise. But yeah, Dead Island 2 may be the next major game to be released, and it's kind of hard to even say Dead Island 2 is an actual major game. Moving on, Fight and Rage is coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series on March 1st. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up game. Looks alright, but not amazing. Like, you have a very generic-looking character here, generic bull character here, and then you have a generic bikini-fighting lady here, which one of those is not like the other as far as the amount of clothing they're wearing. I would say this bull character here is way too big compared to all the other characters here. Like, you have this F. Norris, who is about the same size as these rat enemies, and then you have the bikini lady here, Gal, just named Gal, same size as F. Norris, and then you have Ricardo as a giant character. Moving on, Stray Blade launches April 20th. PC closed beta signups now available. This feels like the first time I've even heard of a game called Stray Blade. It looks like it might be kind of low polygon Elder Scrolls or Dark Souls, not Elder Scrolls. which at a certain point I don't know if you really would call this Dark Souls even, just because it's fantasy and hack and slash gameplay in a 3D environment. Like, there might be a better description of it. These screenshots are really not showing anything. For something that's coming out on April 20th, you would expect them to have more to show. Moving on, the Mage Seeker, a League of Legends story, has been announced for console and PC. I feel like there's been at least 2 other League of Legends spin-off games. And I knew that Riot was working on those kinds of games, but it hasn't increased my interest in either playing League of Legends or any of the side games. And this, with its like trailer here, we could try and look at this and see if there's something that would interest me, but I don't think there is. There's incredibly small amounts of animations here being shown, and this seems like this is a collection of several different announcements of several different games just being teased. That's just like a terrible way to tease things, is to not even have a full screen image show off. Somebody who made this trailer got too artsy for their own good. The other game, Convergence, or I'll just call it Convergence with a slash, is also been announced. So there's 2 games. This one coming out this summer. Yeah. And then a game called Song of Nunu, a League of Legends story, launches this fall. None of these games possibly are that big or that good. You're not going to release 3 different games over the course of a year and expect them all to be major games. Some of these games seem to also be licensed or being developed by other companies, so at a certain point I'd rather see Tequila Works. I think if Tequila Works is the company I'm thinking about, I think they probably would be better off making their own games. I mean, even if Tequila Works isn't the company I'm thinking about. Tencent acquired a majority stake of Tequila Works 11 months ago, and now they're making a League of Legends game. So we now see real evidence of what happens when you get acquired by Tencent, is you end up working as a subsidiary of Riot. Meanwhile, 3 years ago they had released their game Gylt, G-Y-L-T, and Groundhog Day, Like Father, Like Son, and Rhyme, which that game had some more potential, but it wasn't particularly good. So arguably, Tequila Works is to blame for their own downfall in that they made several games that did not sell well, but now they have been reduced to just making League of Legends side games. I wouldn't be surprised if the same could be said for the other 2 companies that are making the other 2 League of Legends side story games. Moving on, Power Wash Simulator has free DLC for Midgar Special Pack launching March 2nd. Midgar, I assume, is in the Final Fantasy universe. Yeah. That's what I'm assuming from the looks of this. There's something definitely wrong with the idea that you could just power wash a motorcycle, or you could power wash a pinball table, or a neon light, or any of those things. Like, each of these would be severely damaged, or if not short-circuited and broken, ruined by being power washed. There's actually very little that you should power wash. Apparently a game called Redemption Reapers has a final trailer. It's a strategy RPG due out February 22nd. Is this from Square Enix? It kind of looks like Square Enix, but it also kind of looks like a Square Enix game from like 5 to 10 years ago. Nope, it's not from Square Enix, so maybe I should excuse the bad graphics. Do have a problem here where there's too much sameness in the outfits with all this dark leather. You got some variety with a blonde girl and a gray girl and possibly a redheaded girl here. And then you've got a big buff guy and a more slender guy. Let's see. Cutscenes here might be cool, but the actual gameplay looks like it's more of a XCOM style positional placement turn-based gameplay, which once I see that kind of gameplay I lose all interest. Doesn't really matter how many cutscenes you have, and inherently if the cutscenes are going to be of this level of quality as far as the animation, that's not going to be very interesting to me anyways. Moving on, Kill It With Fire VR announced for the PSVR 2, PSVR, Quest 2, and Steam VR. This is the first game we've seen announced for VR recently to include the PlayStation VR 1 and the Quest 2 and Steam VR. Generally, I'm not seeing a lot of announcements for VR games that are new at all. And Kill It With Fire looks like it might be kind of funny, but again, it's just another VR game that seems like you could probably play this outside of VR just as well. Let's see, we already talked about the PlayStation Plus game catalog and classics lineup for February 2023, so we don't need to cover that again. A game called Solaris Off-Road Combat 2 has been announced, seemingly for the PlayStation VR. More details coming soon. It might also come to the PlayStation 5, or it might be a case that Komatsu is tagging PlayStation VR games as also PS5 games, which is somewhat technically true but somewhat deceptive also. I don't know. A better way to do it would have been to make a tag that says PlayStation VR 2 plus PlayStation 5, because I doubt there's ever going to be a time. Well, there might be a time where you can play things with the VR2 and not need the PlayStation 5. I don't know what's the best way to label that. All they have is a screenshot here, so we'll leave it at that. And then a game called Homestead Arcania launches in April, apparently for the PC and Xbox Series. One of the problems about the... Let's see, it's got a Steam page, so let's go over and look at the Steam page first. Anyways, one of the problems about PC gaming, though, is that there's just never really a major improvement that's likely to happen. Like, even if they came out with a brand new graphics card that could do an amazing new thing like ray tracing way better, or just an amazing new thing that we've never even seen before, or if they came out with like super fast loading SSDs or super fast CPU processors, it's just never really going to be targeted by most games, so you don't get those major leaps, which arguably even now if you buy a console you're not really getting those major leaps. Sure, if you went from an Xbox, the original Xbox, to an Xbox Series X, that's a major leap. If you went from a 360 to an Xbox Series X, that would be a major leap. PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 is just completely incompatible systems, so obviously a major leap there. But PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 wasn't really a major leap either. Wii U to the Switch was kind of a major leap, but really more of just an improvement on a concept that was not implemented well in the first place with the Wii U. Um, and arguably, I don't know if you compared the Wii to the Switch that there's that much of a major leap other than it's portable and has a screen built in. But yeah, in the old days, when you went from 8-bit graphics to 16-bit graphics, that did feel like a major leap from an NES to a Super NES. And definitely even going from like a Commodore 64 to an NES was a major leap. But yeah, we don't have that. And arguably that's probably a good thing, because that means we can play new games on older hardware a lot more than what would have happened before. As for this Homestead Arcania, there might be something to it. I like this thumbnail of this like detailed image, detailed coat, but then you don't even see it in the game. If anything, it seems like it's mostly just a farming sim, but you play as a witch, which there's been a few of those games. It's also in a weird 3D environment for farming sim that may not really benefit you much. I don't know if you really need to fly around. I don't know if you're going to actually fight people. So I would definitely need to see a lot more around this game before I start to consider it. Speaking of considering things, let's start looking at games that came out on Steam. Today, being Wednesday, is probably going to be the least full of adult games. Hunting Labyrinth is one of those games that definitely feels like it has an adult patch somewhere, but at least on Steam there's no DLC, and there's no let's see, you can see it's hinting at some lewd imagery here on this picture, and arguably I don't know if Steam monitors or cares whatsoever as far as what you put in the news announcement images. I'm not sure they even really care about what you put on the screenshots so much. I'm not sure they care at all, frankly. But yeah, definitely looks like an RPG Maker game that at some point would at least have a patch to expose more of the belly on this character. No real polish there, though, to make it a game worth playing. Iki Unite does not look like anything, and it's already mixed reviewed. It's being developed by Sunsoft, so I want to look at Sunsoft and just see what is their lineup of games, because that's a name that sounds familiar, but maybe I'm getting confused. At least on Steam, seems like they have just a collection of garbage games. Right. Here we have what looks like a dark Japanese visual novel, but it might be Chinese or Korean. Doesn't seem like there's too much here. And yeah, it only supports Japanese. We may get an English translation of games like this in the future, though. Although, I don't know if this would be particularly that great, because it seems like it is very much all about text, and quite a lot of text. Even in Japanese, this is quite a lot of text being depicted with not that much visuals go around it. And then when you do see the one visual that catches my attention, it's just like in a totally different style. Let's see, Dream Fight Will. I don't know if it's my eyesight or if it's just Steam itself. Half of these screenshots seem blurry. Let's see, Hell Furnace. Yeah, there might be something with this one, so I'll give that a follow. I'm not going to mention if I do shorts or not. Pretty much, if it has a chance of catching anyone's attention, it's going to get a YouTube short going forward. If I move the mouse to the top, then I'm changing to another tab. That means I'm going to make a YouTube short on it, whereas if I'm coming to the side and then the page closes, that means I'm using the middle mouse button to close it and saying no. I'm not making a YouTube short around it. If this was a game released in the 1990s, I might have said yes to this. This is like almost like a B movie equivalent of a video game where it's Attack of the Giant Ants. But I think this is a brand new game and it's just not quite visually polished enough. I think you could probably make a game like this, but you would have to bring it into modern times as far as the visuals and the interfaces. Mini bots, tower defense. Doesn't look like anything. Crazy hill racing. This is a kind of great example of a game that there were popular versions of these on mobile phones many years ago, but they were never really good games. And so there's really no reason why you would bring it to PC, and no reason why I would like promote it. Corpse Keeper. Looks like it's almost feels like a fighting game, but I'm not sure it really is. It's odd that it's rated very positively. See, I just don't quite understand what this is. But I'll give it a follow, since Mob Rule says it is very positive. Feels like it might be an infinite runner or infinite grinder. You have a strategy tower defense game that's an adult one, and I did not realize that's what it was. Oh, I guess if I read the title better, it says Protect Harem City. So it's $3.39 English, allegedly full audio. And so you're playing as this 2D girl. I wouldn't say anime girl. And you're standing behind a wall as goblins and golems are attacking you. And if they attack you, then they sexually assault you, I guess, is the thought. So there is potentially a desire to lose to see those cutscenes. And then there's a general city with different stages and upgrades. You know, this is not by any means a terrible idea as far as an adult game. Take something simplistic. This is not so much a tower defense game as I would say it's a Plants vs. Zombies type game. It has a simplistic gameplay mechanic, and then it integrates adult scenes that aren't even animated particularly well, and that's something you could definitely criticize it for, but it integrates those adult scenes into a narrative, into an idea. It's a silly idea. It's a porno concept, certainly, which that's fine. You don't need deep thought around why you're getting the adult content. But compared to a tile matching game or a match 3 game or just a visual novel with no gameplay mechanics at all, this actually feels like this is a decent experience as a game, on top of having maybe slightly mediocre adult content, but not horrible adult content. Now, I would say Protect Harem City probably better if it was a mobile game. Like, it doesn't feel like something that really needs to be on PC, but I haven't really even done enough research to figure out what the rules of the road are, if there are any rules at all, to have adult games, true adult games, on mobile platforms. I wouldn't be surprised if iOS and the Apple Store says no to pure adult games. I wouldn't be surprised if Google says no to pure adult games. It would certainly explain why you would need to install the Nutaku App Store to run Nutaku adult games, which none of those are particularly good. Of the ones I looked at, I tried for basically a year to see if any of those games were worth actually playing, and they weren't. Alright, so next we have Spicy Strip Poker, another adult game. So yeah, this is 3D CGI character, single character it seems like, and it seems like you are just playing either 5-card draw or maybe something along that way, as far as poker. And so yeah, there's a bunch of basically asset flipped CGI sex scenes of this character, and there's 3 other characters that they say are coming soon on the screen. Again, maybe not the worst concept though, to just have strip poker. You would think that there would be more strip poker games out there, and by having the CGI characters that you can pose, you're getting the exact scenes you want to make. So yeah, if you like poker, it's weird that this game is being sold as early access for $4.49. It's English only. And it is one of these mature content descriptions that is laying down everything as far as nudity, masturbation, explicit sex, oral sex, anal sex, casual sex, strong languages, and references to gambling and poker. What would be funny is if you actually don't play poker in the game. But yeah, that also creates a weird situation potentially where you might struggle to actually win with poker, because poker is pretty random. There is some skill in it, but not a ton. So you might actually struggle to unlock all the scenes to the point of frustration. But yeah, really no reason to have it in early access. And YouTube, Steam thinks it is close to Shadowverse collectible card game, just because it has card game tag, which is ridiculous comparison. Yep. Let's see. I'm on Merrymaking Watch, which I have to assume that this is a parody of I'm on Watch Duty. These horror games, I've seen the Game Grumps play these, where there's some kind of ghostly apparition or anomaly in each of the screenshots, and you have to identify the anomaly before the house gets too haunted, and you're just watching through cameras over and over again. The concept is kind of interesting at first when you see I'm on Watch Duty, or the first one of these, but I think the concept being novel isn't enough to save it as an actual game in the long run. And it is basically a hidden object game that requires a lot of observation and a lot of memory skills, which is going to make it difficult for a lot of people. Even when Game Grumps is playing this, they have 3 people at minimum looking at the screen at the same time, and they're still fail fairly quickly. This is $1.19, and mostly you are just asset flipping things. It's just a new way to asset flip things and create a very minimal number of scenes or screenshots that you have to animate. Next game we have is Plan B Terraform, which, okay, I'll give it a chance. Probably not quite my style of game. Sky Island, I think we can give a chance to. Hard War, I think I would say no. It's just a little too low polygon for its own good. Tower Escape. Looks like there's enough polish here to give that a chance. And then here we have another adult game. Kiko-san 47, my coworker is a single mother. And here you have what looks like pretty bad animations, and 2 of the screenshots are just showing empty backgrounds. And then when you actually get to this girls, you have a 47-year-old coworker in a rundown Japanese room big giant breasts, a little chubby, big hips. Yeah. And then here's a picture of her crying, which, yeah, that's not particularly pleasant. And then this picture is not particularly good either. So it does just seem like, if anything, that there's too much of an emphasis on telling a story and a lack of skill overall as far as animation. They want $6.99 for it, and it's English only. The fact that it's English only and badly animated makes me suspect that this actually wasn't made by a Japanese company in the first place, and it's just trying to look like a Japanese game and doing a very poor job at that point. Like, as far as the fetish of, like, I guess you'd probably put that in MILF category. It says single mother. MILFs aren't super popular amongst Japanese animes. There's a few of them certainly, but they do tend to be drawn well though. Like ugly characters, regardless of age or fetish, tend to not sell too well, with perhaps the exception of ugly men in Japanese anime for some reason. Oh yeah, let me unblur the Backrooms game just to show that the Backrooms game is still basically the same old garbage. Just asset flipped to nothing around the most recent internet meme. Jump Tail. These jump games are becoming far too repetitive for their own good too. Let's see. Pantazo. Doesn't look like there's quite enough game here. 2D exploration platform game with pixel art style. I think when you're saying exploration games, you probably don't want a pixel art style. So I'm going to have to say no to that. HBTR, build, farm, harvest, clean pollution. Home by the river. Riven. I guess that's river. Wouldn't make sense to be Riven. Yeah, I don't think I would say yes to this for a couple of reasons. One, you don't have the actual title in the top here in favor of cramming keywords that don't matter into the title. It doesn't look amazingly polished, as perhaps like a Terraria clone might be the best thing to describe it as. And, yeah, those two things alone are enough to say no to it. Castle Destroyers. Doesn't look like enough of anything. Animal Kingdom as a hidden object game. I'll make a YouTube short around that. Math Car. Again, if this was a game that came out in the 90s, I might say yes to something like this for it being educational, but I'm not sure it's even actually educational, because I'm not really seeing anything here that seems to indicate any math problems. I guess the math problems are way down here, so the vast majority of the images is this, and you just are typing in answers, which, yeah, that's not quite enough of a game. The Dark Pictures anthology, The Devil and Me Friends Pass. It's an interesting thought as far as Friends Pass. Should I make YouTube shorts around Friends Passes? I guess I'll say yes to that and think about it more later. I doubt too many games are going to make Friends Passes in the first place, so I can definitely say yes now. The idea of a Friends Pass being either a free thing or a thing you buy at a discount once you already own the game is a little bit weird. And that makes a big assumption that you own the game in the first place. Is Pharaoh a new era? I'm going to say yes to, because I am desperate to get any kind of Egyptian game. Although, in all fairness, this is probably not the gameplay style I'm looking for. Next, we have an adult game called Sexy Valentine, which was released on the 15th, so a day late. But you would think there would have been more adult games around that. That being said, this is yet again that same gay troll publisher or developer. Just like giant genitalia men, ridiculous, extreme depictions. Definitely feels more like it is trying to make gays look like they are just weird weirdos instead of just having like actual relationships people should respect and care about. The game itself, Sexy Valentine, is $6.59, claims to support 29 languages, but only full audio and subtitles in English. Yeah. There might be a fetish out there for these types of games, but I just don't see it. It does seem like it is just trying to be trolly in the same way that Sex with Hitler is really trying to be trolly and not actually make it an adult product that adults might actually enjoy having. It feels like this is literally promoting the phobia and homophobia by making as bizarre depictions as possible as far as gay sexual activity. Moving on. Blood Money, Good Money looks like garbage. Last Starship, I think this one I've been following, or I've been seeing a lot of promotions. It's still in early access though. This is, I guess, basically FTL 10 years later plus. Like, see what you could do with more of a bigger FTL experience, and it may just play a little bit differently in that you are actually changing the way your ship looks more with more direct control, and you are fighting more in real time versus FTL, which was fighting in turn-based gameplay. Sleight of Hand Dominion, I'll give that a chance. I might be confusing this game, Sleight of Hand: Dominion, with a different game called Dominion. Returnal is now on Steam, so I think that deserves a YouTube short for that reason. Lady of Dreams, is this an adult game? Doesn't seem like it. But it does seem weirdly like it's an asset flip first-person shooter using a weird combination of assets to flip even at that. It's all over the place visually. Tower Skydive. These dropper games were somewhat popular amongst Minecraft players, and then eventually they went from making Minecraft dropper maps to just games that were dropper games on mobile. I'm not sure they ever really came to PC, and this is not really a great example of one that would to come to PC either. So now we have Winter Survival Prologue, which is already mixed, and a prologue, so I think I can dismiss that. Merchant of Bohemia. Looks like it's a trade game. I don't think it's quite polished enough for me to say yes to that. Temple of the Snake. Looks like it might be a snake puzzle tile-based game. Interesting, it's already on my fall list. I don't know how it would have been on the fall list though. Santa Punishes. I don't think there's quite enough here. Say yes to that. Star Shifter. I almost wonder if there are some games here that have glitches, and that's why I'm following them. This star shifter, I guess, finds stars and then he shapeshifts into other animals. I don't think there's enough game there, though. Cube conflict. I don't like this animation style, so I'm going to say no to it. I guess I'm putting a personal opinion out here, but I think most people would agree that a voxel-based cube flat character, smiley face, in a first-person shooter does not make sense. Wrath of the Galaxy. I don't think there's quite enough of a game here. When you look at the simplistic user interface at the top and the sides. Operation Harsh Doorstep. There might be something here. It's not my style of game, but I'll give it a YouTube short. Salvation Land. You know, recently I really haven't seen a walking simulator that looked pretty enough to really justify being a walking simulator, and 5 screenshots in, I'd start to see this is actually a first-person shooter. So I'm questioning if we really are just never going to see another pretty walking simulator that might have a justification. I'll do a YouTube short for this VR game. Still really looking for a good boxing VR game, since the ones so far have not worked. God Touch doesn't look like it's polished enough. And yeah, that was all of the games that came out on Steam. We're 3 hours into the stream now, so I'm glad to be done. But yeah, not that many adult games, but of the adult games we saw, 2 out of the 4 of them actually had fairly interesting variety as far as what the gameplay mechanics are. You'd also think that there might be a Steam sale going on around Valentine's Day, but no, I didn't see any Steam sale or anything like that. Moving on to the GameDeveloper.com articles, there's a report that China is considering further restrictions for younger players. With only 3 hours to play on weekends and holidays, how else can the Chinese government restrict game time for younger players? Well, obviously they're literally just going to slowly reduce it down to 0, or very quickly reduce it down to 0. On top of which, you have to paint the picture much better than just saying they only have 3 hours to play on weekends and holidays. They only have 3 hours to play on weekends and holidays of an incredibly tiny selection of games that have been approved for sale and play in China. So there's massive amounts of limitations of the rights or of players, and limitations through censorship in general. And I guess at a certain point you might argue the players don't actually have rights to play video games, but I mean, at a certain point, what is a right at that point? You have to define that word first. Yeah, I still have this tinfoil hat conspiracy thought that right now in China there is a lot going on that we just do not know about outside of China. Just a lot of, like, more COVID deaths, I think, than were reported. A lot of political upheaval. A lot fewer people actually working at jobs than is being claimed. A lot less production than is actually being made. Being a relatively closed off country, like, you just don't know. It's bordering closer and closer to the other joking tinfoil hat conspiracy thought I've thought of, is as far as what if North Korea was actually a paradise and every other country was lying about how horrible the conditions in North Korea are, so that people don't flee their countries to a paradise. Like, Like, obviously that's not true. North Korea is not a paradise, but wouldn't it be funny if it was? Wouldn't it be funny if North Korea was Wakanda and it was just secretly super successful? It's actually a little surprising there isn't a country that's kind of like a Wakanda, but not super surprising. This is one of those articles, certainly, where we shall see. And it is, I think, only fair to point out that China putting further restrictions on young players is still perhaps more situated in a attempt to do something that you could see where people might agree with that, compared to what's happening in the United States, where 7 more states are potentially considering now requiring adults to supply some governmental form of ID before they can go to a porn site and look at porn. Like, and even that's a sticky situation, because no pun intended. Because yeah, you could kind of agree with that too, that there probably should be some kind of way to verify the age, but giving out such private information as like a government issued ID, and ignoring the fact that many people don't have government issued IDs, is kind of crazy. And obviously these laws, the first one that's been passed and the others that are being proposed, are literally just being done as a first step towards censoring their adult porn sites altogether and blocking them altogether. So yeah, censorship and totalitarianism and fascism is increasing, unfortunately, around the world in different ways. Some good news. Rare when we get good news. Bayonetta 3 has hit 1 million sales in under 4 months. The Nintendo Switch exclusive launched on October 28th. So almost certainly we will see a Bayonetta 4. Hopefully they can find slightly better footing for Bayonetta 4 and continue going forward with the series. And also hopefully they don't get sidelined by making side games for Bayonetta instead and get distracted. I assume with these sales numbers that increases the chances of a Bayonetta 3 coming to PC eventually too. Also. And this really highlights how ineffective the cancel campaign was against Bayonetta 3 by the original English voice actress, which her attempt by far was one of the worst attempts at a cancel movement I've ever seen in general, not only in video games but just in general. But overall, I think the fact that Bayonetta 3 has sold this much also highlights how gamers in particular are better inoculated than most against these kinds of cancel culture attempts. It just does not work at all, because we've seen far too many of them, and we may have even gotten on board with the first couple of them, but yeah, very quickly we've stopped listening to these cancel attempts for the most part. Like, there are still calls for boycotts. We haven't gotten to the point where gamers just say, yeah, here's yet another person calling for a boycott, we're going to ignore this person just as we ignored the others, but we're almost to that point. I think in part some of that definitely comes down to the fact that gamers in general were slandered by mainstream video game journalists in the whole Gamergate nonsense. And at that point, even the gamers realized, well, if this can happen to an entire group of people, you're just wrapping every single gamer together and calling all video gamers toxic or And we still see that with like Warzone, basically calling its entire fandom, everybody who plays Warzone is bunched together and called a toxic player and needs more censorship and more control on the chat. Yeah, we've seen the gamers in particular have seen the negative aspects of going along with these cancel slash censorship efforts enough to not get behind them. Moving on, the 4th annual Impy Award noms showcase the wonderful world of dreams. I don't even know what the Impies are. It's apparently a celebration hosted by Media Molecule that spotlights the very best morsels made in dreams over the past year. So they have an entire made-up awards to highlight dreams, which I've heard dreams mentioned twice in the past week, and that's the first time I've thought of dreams in years, and I'm surprised dreams is even still going around. Like, the concept of dreams, as far as I'm concerned, is totally failed concept and did not lead to games actually being created or dreams as a game creation game itself. Excuse me. Yeah, I don't think dreams as a game creation game itself is a success, because I don't think any game like that is ever going to be much of a success. Even like Game Maker on the Switch or the Mario Maker 1 and 2, those are like the most successful game built around the idea of making your own levels, making your own games, and even Mario Maker is not super successful. It's probably amazingly successful compared to what you would expect, but it's not something people are still making levels for and still playing for. The truth is, a lot of people are not creative, and a lot of people may be creative, but they don't want to be creative when they're playing video games. They don't want to make their own fun. People who had to make their own fun in previous generations, where they were playing with sticks and rocks, stopped doing that as soon as they got better forms of entertainment for a reason. There are no baby boomers that are 80, 90 years old today that are running around making their own fun with sticks and rocks and kicking the can. Even if they physically were capable of doing that, they wouldn't be doing that. They'd be watching TV more than anything, or reading books or watching movies. Moving on, Microsoft will attend the EU hearing to defend the Activision Blizzard deal, which is funny. I thought the EU had already pretty much approved the deal. It was the UK that was the problem, but who knows. I am now getting so confused around all of this. And I still have to lean, I guess I'm just doubling down at this point, I still have to lean to assuming this deal will go through, but I'd say today more than even yesterday, I kind of hope it doesn't go through. I don't feel like Microsoft has done a great job acquiring the companies that it has so far in just like making them more efficient or making more games or making better games. Apparently more late teens and 20-somethings are playing Roblox. I don't know a reason why I would ever want to play Roblox. And adults are talking and spending. Roblox boosted 58.8 million daily active users at the end of 2022, and a good chunk of those were older players. I could see maybe 20-somethings having kids playing Roblox with their kids. But, yeah. In a lot of ways, Roblox very possibly is just a platform that opens up a whole bunch of mods and a whole bunch of games that I just never would look at or care about. So there is this whole possibility that there's just a big gap in my video game knowledge because I'm not looking at Roblox. But I also probably don't have time to look at Roblox. And if I have no interest in looking at them, why would I? Horizon Forbidden West is joining the PlayStation Plus 1 year after launch. If anything, that's probably a great way to contextualize how poorly Horizon Forbidden West has sold. They really never said any major numbers that I recall, but you wouldn't be giving away a game a year later. You'd either give it away day one or you would sell it. Particularly Sony would try and sell it over and over again, I would think. But yeah, Forbidden West, not well received compared to the first Horizon. And then we already talked about Saudi Arabian investment fund increasing its stake in Nintendo. Apex Legends hits a player count peak with a deathmatch mode. So Apex Legends' new season is bringing all the players to the arena. Which, yeah. Again, I couldn't tell you really if you hadn't told me this was Apex Legend characters. I very possibly could have thought they were League of Legends characters. And I'm not sure I can even keep in my mind the difference between Apex Legends and League of Legends. Alright. Moving on. Doing some fall list cleanup. And we have a visual novel called Childhood Friends. Almost certainly there is some kind of censorship mod here that would show these giant boobs. You don't have a girl with that big of boobs without at least showing it once. This came out in 2021 and only has 15 reviews. They are 80% positive, but yeah, I don't think that there's enough polish or enough relevancy here to keep this on the fall list. If I am going to cover visual novels, even if they are just censored visual novels that would have been adult content later, in all fairness, there is a possibility or a need out there to have a character that is just naturally very large-breasted, and that's just depicted as, yes, that's a thing that sometimes happens. Now, arguably, this is not a natural net size. At a certain point, this is a handicapping deformity to be what looks like a high school girl with that large of breasts is going to be incredibly frustrating as far as just buying clothing and people staring just by the extremeness of it. So yeah, you have to be within a realm of reason. But yeah, we have tall people in games, we have short people in games, we have blonde haired people in games, we have brown haired, we have black haired. We should probably have large breasted people in games. Reasonable large breast, as long as small breast and it shouldn't be the main focus, but almost certainly in this case it is the main focus. So moving on, we have a 2020 game called Chief's Quest, which, yeah, either I say yes to this and make an exception, or I say no to it because it's irrelevant. And let's see, we have puzzle review, boring. Let's see, developer responded. Thanks for the bug report. This error has been fixed already. Okay, I guess I'll make an exception here, just because there aren't that many First Nations, Native American games, people trying to cover that. Inherently, there isn't a single monoculture as far as First Nations and Native Americans, so very possibly the paintings of these teepees, or just having teepees in general, does not match having a headband and a feather, or having this kind of necklace. Which, since there isn't really a monoculture, having a spider monster as a villain called the Iktomi. May not be accurate enough either. No, I recently saw a story that there was parts of the reserves in the United States that, for the first time in their creation, so potentially 100 years plus, are just now getting electricity. So if some of the reserves are that under established, under supported, how in the world could you possibly expect First Nations to possibly be able to program video games or tell their stories in any way? And I imagine education is not particularly good in the reserves either. It probably varies quite a bit. Although education's pretty bad everywhere. And yeah, I'll put this on the wish list and just make an exception because this is something that interests me. And it does look like it's decent enough. Let's see. Chico and the Magic Orchid DX. This may have been a game that actually was released for the Nintendo DX. Or this may just be a game designed to look like the Nintendo DX. I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's been out long enough, it's not really relevant. And I'm not a big enough Game Boy fan to want to play something that's designed to either look like a Game Boy or actually was for the Game Boy. Just because it might be a little bit close to something like a Link's Awakening Zelda game. Yeah. I'm gonna say no to that. Chisel is another one of these chess puzzle games with no relevance. Meditative chess puzzler with a twist. Clear the board by chaining moves together. Part of the problem as to why I tend not to put games that have less than 30 reviews, less than 30 not you got the game for free reviews, is it's just too easy to give the game away for free for good reviews or give away 5 or 6 copies of the game for free in general, and by purchasing the game for people. So yeah, I think I'll say no to this. There's just not enough reviews in it, and it doesn't really look that good. Next we have a game called Chex, which this just came out in 2023, so give that more time. And then we have Chevalier History, which I don't think is quite what you would call an RPG maker. Seems to be half RPG, half visual novel. It is tagged with having sexual content in it. Let's see if that actually is true. Nope, it says it just has strong language. Yep, that is a big problem with the tags just being lies, or there being maybe an uncensored patch here. This is a game that crosses that line though, where even if there was an uncensored patch, it looks like there might be enough gameplay here. Although maybe not, because it might be a trick where you've got your RPG actual gameplay experience happening over here, and then the vast majority of the time, the rest of the time, this screen is just your main character being depicted. This might be a trick specifically to hide the fact that the game was originally made in a 4:3 ratio and you're trying to make it a 16:9 ratio. Unfortunately, you would either have to sit here and watch this entire trailer, because I'm having a hard time jumping forward. Yeah. It is. It's a 4:3 ratio game. And they are hiding it by basically changing the side art. Which at a certain point, that almost makes some sense. To take a 4:3 ratio game and then modify it. That being said, I don't think I'm going to say yes to this. Because it's pulling out a lot of tricks to make me say yes. But it's not a game I recognize. It's not very relevant, even though lots of people do like it. But you know what? I shouldn't be that picky either. I put a bunch of games on my wish list that I really wouldn't purchase for myself, and are just there in case somebody wants to friend me. How long has that been blurred? But yeah, this really is a game that meets the requirements to make it to the wish list, so it should make it to the wish list. If somebody wanted me specifically to play this game, they could gift it to me. It's on the wish list, so those are things I would say are the best things to gift me if you're going to gift me a game, versus just gifting me random games that I may have zero interest in. Chess Explosion, on the other hand, here is a chess game that does look like it is way better. It's almost like a Bomberman game with chess pieces. So I can very easily put that on the wish list. 96% positive. I suppose it is somewhat questionable as far as just how many chess games in total do I want to play. And when you're looking at the fall list through alphabetical listing, you're going to get everything that starts chess in a row. And I think this one we can say no to. Again, even though it is 83% positive, it's not really relevant. And yeah. Chessformer. Grid-based puzzle platformer. This really does set up a potential mini-series of just playing games that are chess related. This page does not want to load. On one hand, I think I kind of fixed my Wi-Fi problem. On another hand, though, I still feel like there are just times when the connection on my ISP is spotty enough to cause problems. Chess++ is not relevant enough, so let's see if we can remove that from the fall list. Okay, then let's go back and see if we can reload this page and make sure Chessformer is on the wish list and no longer on the follow list. Chess VR Multiverse Journey. We were saying yes to it to give it more time, but now we can see it's mixed, so I'll say no to it. Then, yeah, that was the end of the fall list. So let's see, let's go ahead and retry this and bring up this and do this to bring back this. I really don't have anything to do as far as a daily live, so I will start a daily live anyways. You would kind of hope though that the dual lives would give you some kind of chance at a reward for the more of them you watched. Meanwhile, while this is playing, I'm going to look at my Twitter feed and just see if there's any new news. Otherwise, that's going to be it for this stream. I suppose it's also interesting that there isn't any real Valentine's Day YouTube videos from anybody I've followed. Like, didn't see a single post around it. At a certain level, I guess I maybe everybody's just on board with the idea of Valentine's Day being a made-up holiday designed to sell candy and jewelry, and now that everybody is broke, nobody wants to engage with that, and I can agree with that, certainly. But I, on a certain level, do think that there should be at least one day a year in which love is celebrated and romance is celebrated. Arguably, it'd be nice if it was celebrated every day of the year, but one special day is not a crazy thought. On the other hand, there's definitely an argument to be said that if you feel entitled, which, let's face it, a lot of significant others, I won't gender it, do feel entitled to be treated special on a specific day of the year, like Valentine's Day, that probably only feeds to an entitlement that exists overall. And I will gender it to say, in general, in American United States culture, there is a lot of females who were raised poorly to think that they deserved better treatment or special treatment just because they were female. And they never learned any different. And that's a weird note to end on, but I think that is really what we're going to end on. There's a survey here. There was nothing on Twitter. Let's see. 50 gems for doing a survey. I may do that off screen just to pathetically get 50 gems as far as the gameplay goes. Maybe they would actually listen to my feedback more than even the 50 gems, which would be more valuable if they listened to player feedback and kind of optimized and sped up the process a little bit more on Yu-Gi-Oh! It's far too easy to spend an hour playing only 4 or 5 games in Yu-Gi-Oh! When it would be much nicer to play 10 to 15 games in an hour. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. There's also links to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list to support me further. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.